Hi, everyone. Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about energy and environment at the Fuqua School of Business. My name is Katie Kross. I am Managing Director of the Center for Energy Development and the Global Environment, or EDGE for short. And I'm joined today by one of our students, Ryan. Ryan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ryan Mascheri. I'm a second-year MBA student here at Fuqua, aligned with the EDGE Center. And yeah, happy to be here and answer any questions that I hopefully can.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to get started, and we're going to be answering your questions live on our webinar today. So if you are joining us live, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can as they come in. If you are watching this as a recording or we just don't have time to get to your question, just know that there's a lot of extra information on our website. So that is centers.fuqua.duke.edu/edge. That's a long website, but we'll put it in the link to the video as well as on the screen. We have lots of content there on our EDGE Center website where we have FAQs, we have student profiles, we have some other perspective video Q&As there. We also I'll just add that Ryan and I aren't involved with the admissions decision. So if you have questions that are really specific to applications or admissions deadlines, I'm going to direct you instead to send those to admissions-info@fuqua.duke.edu. And again, we'll also send you that email address again on the screen and in the recording afterwards. But the admissions office can help channel a lot of those specific admissions-related questions. And they can also help you get to other folks at Fuqua who can answer your questions after this session. So just before we jump into any questions you have, I'll just say a few words of background about EDGE and the Energy and Environment program here at Fuqua. So Fuqua has an incredible set of offerings for students who are interested in energy and environment. Our goal is to provide you with a complete portfolio of options, whether that's classes, extracurricular opportunities, experiential learning, career support, and hopefully you'll have a chance to go sort of as deep as you want to. So some of you might be watching and you want to go into investment banking or management consulting, but maybe you just want to learn a little bit about what's happening with energy transition or climate and how it will affect business. You can definitely take a class or participate in Energy Week or come to a couple of extracurricular events. But maybe you're somebody who actually knows you want to go deep on these topics. You want to use your MBA as an opportunity to springboard into an energy and environment career. In that case, we have a lot of offerings, and you really have a chance to go deep in your time at Fuqua. So, Ryan, I know you're one of those students who've gone deep. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about your experience here and what you've done as a student and your interests.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've touched on a lot of the areas. I heard experiential learning, some of the career aspects, some of the class aspects. So I think where do I start? I, as more of a background about myself, studied operations in my undergrad and actually worked in oil and gas. And sort of at one point when I was really thinking, what do I want to do next? I knew that I wanted to go get an MBA just to sort of broaden my business horizons. And there were several reasons behind that, but I also knew that I wanted to move into the energy and environment space. So not everybody really comes into school knowing where they really fall on there. Some may be more sustainability, some may be more energy, some more environment. But I mean, Duke has offerings for all of that. But really for me, I knew I was only looking at MBA programs that were going to be able to offer me sort of that combination of energy, finance, and an MBA. And I think since I've gotten here, I've tried to lean as much into the academic offerings, both here at Fuqua and the Nicholas School of Business. But there's also great classes over at the law school, has a couple of good offerings. And I'd probably say those are the three. There's been a couple classes I've been recommended at policy school, but you're probably going to find the most at Fuqua and the Nicholas School of the Environment, that is. And that can be anything from Dan Vermeer's EDGE seminar, which has been awesome, Lincoln Pratson's Energy Markets and Innovation, I believe, that's offered every 2 years. I'm actually TAing Dan's executive version of that in the spring, so kind of getting to see from a different lens. And then a lot of the finance classes where you have sort of project finance, which is a lot of the sort of energy finance that comes into that class, corporate finance. And as you can tell, I've really honed in on the energy finance type of it, but there's a lot more of the sort of environmental classes. FCCP, which I think maybe we'll get into a little bit, the Fuqua Client Consulting Practicum, that is a great way to just get real world experience in terms of my client. They told me I can say this now. It was CarbFix, which is a carbon capture and sequestration company based out of Iceland, and they were looking to expand into the U.S. And for me, that was a really good experience to just say, okay, I've never worked on a go-to-market strategy, and I know nothing about carbon capture. And so getting to work with, it was 2 other dual degree members and then 3 MBA folks who were very energy and environment focused. But just getting to really work in that team and see how do you actually engage with a client. I think, and I've been asked about that several times, whether it's in interviews or, networking events, someone that, hears that I worked on that type of project. I think that just brings invaluable experience. What else is there? We've touched on academics, some of the extracurriculars.
Clubs. You want to talk
Clubs,
about
yes.
your club experience? It was so small.
Yeah. So here at Fuqua, you have there's the Energy Club, and there's also sort of a broader Duke undergrad energy club. There's a Nicholas School energy club. You'll meet several people across campus that are affiliated sort of in this space. And I don't think I realized how big my network would get in that, whether it was someone at the policy school or law school or here or undergrad. And I'm going to touch on Energy Week shortly. But as part of the Fuqua Energy Club, our keynote event, as Katie knows, is the Energy Conference, which is part of Energy Week at Duke. And I don't know if I was crazy or just what, but I came on in my first year and was the operations chair. So sort of everything that it takes to really do the energy conference the day of, I was heading that up, catering, making sure people had parking, hotels, etc. And then this year I actually co-chaired it with one of my classmates, and it was an amazing experience. And that really, I was telling Katie before we came on air, I was actually on the phone earlier today with one of our panelists who was at the conference, kind of just in more of a mentorship role, which I think that's a really good example of just how you can make connections here at Fuqua and just reach out to people and say, hey, thank you so much for coming to the conference. I wanted to thank you. We didn't really get to speak afterwards, but B, I had a couple of questions, if you don't mind, giving me your advice. And, that's not the reason I did it, but, that's definitely something that I think it's very difficult to find that in another way. And I've tried to do a few of the things with the Energy Club, just kind of help. They do a really good series in the fall. I can't remember if it was 4 or 5 parts of just different energy pathways you can go into. There was one that was around investment banking and consulting. So just hearing from second years who actually did those summer internships and, hey, what was your process of recruiting and what was your summer like? This year, I think I was sitting more so on if you did maybe any sort of utility or working for nonprofit or just kind of different areas. I was at Duke Energy for the summer in their finance team. They had an international panel day. So really the team does. The team in the club does a really good job of really trying to make sure kind of whatever angle you're coming from that it's covered, which I have found tremendously helpful. And maybe just to kind of further on that, even some of the second years or technically third years last year who were dual degrees, they were immensely helpful, not only from just understanding what should I be thinking about from sort of my career perspective, and I didn't, even though I knew I wanted to do energy coming into school, it was wow, this is such a broad landscape. And I think that kind of gave me a little bit of, paralysis by analysis at the beginning of my first year, kind of coming in thinking, okay, energy and finance, but there's that intersection. That's not one intersection. That is so many, you can fall into so many places. And I think, looking at all that, I don't think I could have gotten through it without some of the help of second years who had been through it and seen that process, really from start to finish. And so, yeah, and I'm still in touch with those people, and somehow I'm the one giving the advice now. So, yeah, there's been a lot. And I know I just kind of word vomited, but we can go in deeper into any of those.
Totally. And I'll just say for some of you, obviously Ryan's super focused on energy, and that is a big part of what we do here. But also at Fuqua, we deliberately put energy and environment together. The thesis for us is that, there are other schools out there that might just focus on energy or sustainability. For us, we really believe that if you want to work in the energy sector after graduation, no matter where you are in that sector, you are going to have to understand the environmental and climate context that that sector is going to be operating in the future. And likewise, if you want to work on corporate sustainability issues, climate risk, agriculture, like any other sustainability issue, energy is a huge piece of that footprint. And so you need to understand energy if you want to work in an environmental related career too. But we do, however, have students who are not necessarily going into the energy sector. They might want to go work for a company in another sector like CPG or apparel or tech, and they want to work on energy and sustainability issues there. We have students who want to work in sustainability consulting, who want to work in the climate tech startup space. What am I forgetting? It's like a whole range of issues.
It really, when I talk to my friends that are not in energy and environment landscape, and you start explaining just how energy and the environment really touches every single pathway you can go down, I think people's eyes kind of open up and see. And I think I just heard you mention tech, consumer packaged goods, obviously energy, even like I've met a few people that are really at this interesting nexus of healthcare and energy. And then you start talking about like energy security and doing some nonprofit consulting, like Bridgespan, that are more focused on like nonprofit within the energy environment. There's so many ways you can go to get into it. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like obviously, that was just me personally knew that I wanted to go more the specific energy route, like power producers, utilities, energy companies. But that was more because I saw just how much of the landscape, not only domestically but internationally, it's like that touches everything. And so that was what brought me along. But yeah, I mean, as I said, two of the team members that I had on that FCCP project, I mean, they're both going consulting to do energy and environment work, which is pretty broad. Actually, I guess 3 of them are going that route. One of them actually was at a really cool startup this summer doing more like fish life cycle, actually working in Northwest U.S. and Alaska on actually like processing fish much better to get to use more of it. So like
sustainably, yeah.
Those are like, even though we were both working on the same project, you can see, and he was actually in my C lead, so that's someone I've gotten to know very well. But yeah, to Katie's point, you can really see the breadth of opportunities that you have. And I know people who were at Big Food this summer working on some sustainability options. Someone that was at places like Microsoft or Amazon. So those are mine. Plus those 3 routes are 3 or 4 completely different routes, but sort of all coming from the same angle, which is awesome. And just being around the people in the building, I don't think you might not realize how much you pick up of just being able to talk and be in the same classes and like going to Energy Club events and the Net Impact Club events, or I see a question about like the consulting club, and just being able to meet all these types of people.
Yeah. So one of our questions here is about sort of how the student wants to know the relationship between the Energy Club and Consulting Club. I'll kind of broaden that. Students often ask, like, how do all these pieces and options fit together? Mm-hmm. One of the things I like about Fuqua is that it's a very customizable experience. So you really have the chance to pick and choose depending on what your career interests are. I'm assuming that Energy Club was not the only club you were involved with, right? Like, what were some of the others?
I did a little bit with the consulting club. I was actually recruiting full time for consulting this year, but more not sort of like what maybe a lot of people are on the webinar thinking of, like the traditional MBBs or Big Four. I was looking more, smaller shops that are focused on energy and environment. But it was a huge help being able to go to those resources, pull them offline. I mean, like even like giving cases now to first years. So broadly, specifically on like the consulting energy club, I wouldn't say there's any like really any clubs that like mesh, but it's not like, I'm involved with this club, so I can't. No, it's like I was.
Did you do any fun clubs? Did you have anything
I'm
else,
actually co-president of the European Club, which is just like I'm a dual citizen Italian, so that's just like something I like, just like on the side. We had a pizza making class 2 weeks ago over at Cucino Forno.
I should be invited to these things.
it was on Fuqua Connect. It was open to faculty and staff. But no, so you can get involved in as many things as possible. I will say, for anybody that is specifically looking at consulting and IB, those 2 clubs have a very specific roadmap that you follow, and so like just I promise you don't need to worry about too much right now. Like, what do I need to be doing today? Yeah. I guarantee you day one from like even in summer term or in the summer, you're going to be getting reached out to, and they'll say, hey, like here's the roadmap that you follow. But besides that, really any other career path, you know, I don't want to say every other career path is, you know, on your own, but it's less structured. You can go from sort of those two clubs structured to like a little bit less to then just like purely say like startup where you're like purely on your own. So there's probably the 3 tiers there. But yeah, and there's tons of social clubs. The one club I'll say that maybe getting to the next question, types of sustainability clubs. There's also the Net Impact Club. Yeah. They are incredible, and that is more of a broad touching sustainability, and it's not like, oh, I'm involved with Energy Club, so I'm not involved with the Net Impact. No, it's not that at all. There's the Energy Club has a conference in the fall, which I just touched on, and the Net Impact Club has a conference in the spring. Yeah. That's probably the big distinction, is like they'll each have their own, but we do, like the two clubs themselves will do a lot of co-events, but even just whenever there's an event for say Net Impact, like I track that Impact Club in our Slack channels. I'm on the email that comes out every week. So, you know, I read everything that's coming out. I'll even look at some of when I was recruiting, looking at the job postings that were coming out. And so, yeah, I think you probably see a lot of overlap of just people that are interested in the two spaces. But just by virtue of how broad sustainability is, there typically tends to be more people in there.
I'll just add a couple of things in terms of one of our questions here is about sustainability clubs and extracurriculars. So Net Impact Club is very active. Both the Net Impact Club and the Energy Club, they help with career support. They put on panels of second years talking about their internships. They help with roadmaps to careers. They organize coffee chats, bring speakers to campus. Net Impact Club will organize the Sustainable Business and Social Impact Conference every spring semester, which is a really big event, as big as Energy Conference in the fall. There's also, that might be relevant to some of you, the Food and Ag Club has a lot of events that are very sustainability oriented. There is also a dual degree club, so we call them the MEMBAs, the MEM MBA Club. So those are students who are opting to do 2 masters in the space of 3 years. So they're getting an MBA and they're getting a Master's of Environmental Management. Really robust program, and we have about 12 students per class year, or between 30 and 40 total on campus at any given time. So there's also a MEMBA club for the students who are pursuing that. Mm-hmm. We have opportunities to get involved directly with EDGE as an EDGE fellow. So we have a platform that we call MBA-EDGE, MBA-EDGE.com, where we're publishing papers on different sustainability and energy topics. Students work with us, typically second years, but sometimes first years too, work with us to write those papers. So it's a publication credit. Super interesting way to research a new industry if you're interested in that. We help source the projects for the FCCP program.
I was just going to say, those some of those MBA-EDGE papers were some of the first things I read even before I got to campus, just to try and get up to speed on a few different topics. So yeah, even if you don't want to write one, that's just a shameless plug to go out there and read right now.
Yeah. We're proud of them. I think that the students do a really incredible job of writing, and then we put them all together in a paper that might be something like U.S. power markets, what every MBA needs to know, as a primer for students to get caught up to speed.
And also the climate cap is another amazing. You can maybe explain this better than I can, but from my perspective, climate cap was started at Fuqua, started at Duke here, and now it's I don't even remember how many schools are involved in it, but it's an MBA sort of energy and environment club, you can say, to where the flagship event is every year. It's at a different school. Last year was at Michigan Ross, to where we had 400
total MBAs there.
Total, just
from
MBAs.
Other schools,
I mean, we had UT Austin, Michigan, Duke, Yale, Cal Berkeley, UNC, like tons of, and that was just an amazing way. And I'm connected with a ton of those people. I went to UT Austin undergrad, and I was back at Michigan in the fall, and met up with people for the football game, just through people who I'd met there. So that that's just another example of just amazing ways you can get connected with people that are also interested in this. And the climate cap is it's a more broad focused event. It's not just energy. It's really anything that touches the energy, environment, sustainability, just climate related. 2 or 3 days. I can't remember how many.
The summit is 2 days, yeah.
Yeah, summit was 2 days.
So Climate Cap, if you want to learn more about that, we have a separate website for that. It's climatecap.org. We have almost 50 partner schools now, including in Europe. We're working to grow that network globally. And Duke is still the organizing secretariat for that. So we coordinate with the host school. We select the host school. We help the host school run the summit, but then we also have a monthly newsletter, and we have a fellowship program where we select MBAs from different schools to participate in a year-long climate. It's all related to climate risk and opportunity as it relates to business impact. So there's also stuff, you alluded to the Nicholas School, but Duke has institutionally a university-wide climate commitment. There's a campus sustainability office. There's a Nicholas Institute, which is putting out a lot of really interesting energy and environment research and hires students as fellows. There's the World Food Policy Center, the Energy and Emerging Markets. There's a lot to get involved with across campus.
There's no shortage.
Yeah.
It's more, I think it's what do I want? Not like what can I find? It's okay, I need to pick and choose.
Yeah.
What I actually get involved with was maybe the tougher part at the very beginning of just, okay, not am I going to be able to get involved? It's more so, okay, let's pick and choose, because you can only do so much.
So how did you figure that out?
A bit of research up front. I think whoever's on this is doing the right thing of just learning a bit more of, okay, what does Duke have to offer? And I think coming into the fall, my initial thought was, okay, let's just get involved with the energy conference. I felt that was it was a really good way to start meeting people and just kind of use the skill set that I had coming from sort of an operations project management background. Okay, that's a tangible skill. I know nothing about energy and the environment, but I can use that to start getting involved. And then just by way of meeting people, as your first year goes along, you can then start figuring out, okay, what do I want to take on this year versus next year? And so for me, I sort of just had a matrix going of what do I want sort of first year fall, first year spring, second year fall, second year spring, and just how much time is that going to take, and really trying to make sure I can do many different things. Originally, I was not planning on doing the co-chair for the energy conference this year, but yeah, I think you kind of come to these points where you say, okay, I just have to make a decision. Do I do something versus that I've already done, even though it's a totally different way of doing it, versus do something else? And just, talking to people who have, second years or, the dual degrees who have been here at that point 3 years, people like yourself, Dan, then yeah, I think just kind of thinking to yourself, what do I really want to get out of this process? Who do I want to meet? What sort of things what skills do I want to build myself? So it's unique to everybody, but that was the way I approached it.
Awesome. You guys, also Ryan is being super modest about this co-chair role of the Energy Conference. He had worked on that from February through November, and he and his co-chair just did a tremendous job of putting on a whole conference for 600 people, day-long event. It was really incredible. So yeah, you get to have accolades like that on your resume at the end of your 2 years too.
Yeah, and I would say, whenever you meet Fuqua alumni, and just whether you're networking later on and you can, they see on your resume, okay, hey, they were involved in Energy Club or they did Energy Conference, and I will know what that is, and whatever. Like I was saying, Mike, the guy I was talking to earlier today, he was Energy Club president in 2012, and so that's sort of an immediate connection you can just make with someone to say, oh, cool, we're speaking the same language now. Right. Yeah.
So we haven't talked much about career support and recruiting. Mm-hmm. Do you want to say anything about that and what that path's like, or
sure?
I think what's been valuable?
Yeah, and so I touched on it just a second ago. If you're thinking to do IB or consulting in the energy space, there's going to be sort of framework around that, and you'll hear plenty of that. All I can say right now is I promise there's plenty of support. So don't freak out if you're way. It's early. Otherwise, the energy and environment and sustainability broadly recruiting process, it varies to a degree. Some companies like a NextEra or AES, or if you're doing you want to do sustainability within the food systems, Conagra, there are certain large companies that they're going to have they're going to be here in probably November. They're going to have coffee chats. There's going to be you want to be kind of meeting with them. Those are a bit more structured. Other companies, if you want to go more like startup, developer, or like I was talking about the guy who went and worked for the startup out in Alaska. So you can see there's a bit of a spectrum of how sort of unique your offering is. But there's the Career Management Center here, which can offer really good support in terms of just helping you prep for interviews and coffee chats. But in terms of networking and whatnot, really like leaning on the second years or the members who it's their third year on campus and just understanding, hey, if you want to go and do like VC work or whatever, I think you just really have to start asking people here on campus and reaching out on LinkedIn and just trying to leverage that network as early as possible. As I said, I was sort of wide net, didn't really know where I wanted to fall into the space. I ended up getting connected just with the right person at Duke, and they then ended up posting their internship offering, and the team just made a ton of sense. But I mean, I had been networking with a lot of other companies at that point, and I think I fell into the right place in my internship. They really helped me clarify coming full time. Okay, what are the 7 or 8 companies that I really want to target this time around, and spending a lot more time just networking with them individually rather than trying to learn a lot about what's the offering in the landscape like, which that's sort of thing what I was doing first year. But the short answer is there's a ton of resources across campuses, whether it's CMC, Katie's been a huge help from day one, other students, talking to professors, researchers, so here on campus you're going to have tons of opportunities to just kind of know who's out there.
Team Fuqua, right?
Team Fuqua, yeah, it is. And like even now it's, even I've only been here, I guess, a year and a half, but knowing individuals who have graduated and are at, from the energy perspective, just from my side, a National Grid or an AES or a NextEra or a Duke or, other developers, like immediately just within 1 year, I see people that are all over the map doing different things from finance to operations to more investment. So people that are going to, Marathon Capital, Investment Bank, McKinsey, BCG, and so like your network is just you're gonna realize where people are going across the energy and environment spaces is very, very broad.
Awesome. So we're almost out of time. Is there anything we haven't touched on or parting thoughts about why Fuqua?
You said Team Fuqua, and I feel like every time someone asks me, I come back to that in a differing degree, but like there's so much support here at school. I think there's within this is not a Fuqua thing, just like the MBA, sometimes the recruiting timeline can feel weird. It's like you show up day one and people are kind of expecting you to know what you want to do, and everybody's on their own schedule. Some people are going to show up knowing I want to go do XYZ. Some people, I think I was maybe in the middle of like, I know I want to do that, but not really sure where. Mm-hmm. And other people are like, I just figured an MBA was a good idea. So, right. But no matter what, there's the same support for everybody. And, this is not like it's a competitive school. People want to do well, but it's not a cutthroat competitive school. And I think those are very different things. Yeah. And, I hope everybody that's on here that, you want to come to Fuqua, like I wish everybody the best. But it's a place where we all support each other. And so just, I think if that's a place you want to be, come to Fuqua. Like, I think it's the best school in the nation or in the world, honestly, especially if you're interested in energy and the environment, sustainability more broadly.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think that one of Fuqua's strengths is that it is broad. You heard this sort of sense of like wealth of opportunities that can sometimes be hard to navigate, but you do have a lot of supporters helping you navigate that space. But also it really means you could really focus on what it is that you want to get out of business school, what you want to do after business school, and know that you're going to have world-class resources across the board. So even if it's not a well-worn path, if you want to do something entrepreneurial or you want to work on climate finance or social equity or nature-based solutions, or you want to work in supply chain for apparel company, like there are a lot of options, and there is a lot of support in helping you navigate all of those options here. So hopefully if you take away nothing else, that we have a lot of resources, but most importantly, a welcoming, supportive community that will help you figure out exactly how to get from step to step till you get exactly what you want when you graduate.
Yep.
And we have a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's been awesome. Met, some of my best friends, even, I didn't even touch on it, like fall break was in the Dominican Republic, going down to South America with some friends over winter break. Nice. So yeah, like it's not all just
now it's second year and the energy conference is over, so
It is.
you got a good spring ahead of you.
I know. And spring in Durham is amazing.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us here today. Really appreciate it. And we hope to see you in Durham soon.